This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is Gentleviewer.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Joanne McCall. Joanne, I'm very, very glad to have you here today. I'm excited about this one. So Joanne McCall is a publicist and media trainer who's been working with authors for over 2 decades. I know that is hard to believe when you're looking at her, but 2 decades in this business. She's friends with producers, podcasters, editors, journalists of every kind of media outlet, and she helps authors be prepared for doing interviews. So we met one another at a conference, the Author Alchemy Summit, and right away I was like, I have got to have Joanne on the show. So thank you so much for being here today.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world, Ben. It was great meeting you at the conference. It was so much fun. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yes, this will be a fun one. And I
Yeah.
mean, we always come in these full costumes, and this is just, for even for the listeners, we're really there for you. So folks on YouTube can see how we are dressed, but tell the listeners how you chose to dress up for today's show.
Oh, listen, anytime I get a chance to do this, I'm doing it. I am wearing my lovely toga.
Ah, yes, yes. And what inspired this?
There was an old movie called Animal House years ago. I barely remember the movie when it came out, but I had a real good friend who loved it. And there was a big anniversary celebration going on in Cottage Grove, Oregon, where I think they did the original movie. And so
Ah,
she says, you got to come with me. You got to come with me. And I said, okay, I'll go with you. Why not? Good party. You have to wear a toga. I said, okay. So, and Otis Day and the Knights were there and we were singing Shout, and it was just a really good time. So I'm
oh
pulling
my
out the toga
gosh. That
anytime I can.
sounds so cool. An
Yeah.
old school toga party.
Yep.
Well, in the theme, I went with Revenge of the Nerds costume, film that's roughly from the same era, a few years later. So I've got my plaid shirt on and the pocket protector, which these are hard to find now. I had to get one of these on Amazon. I've got the ill-fitting jeans. The shoes that were the least cool possible shoes to wear in 1984, which I think have come back at different times in our history, but very, very uncool, very nerdy. And this costume is barely a costume for me. This is, I've kind of got the nerdy vibe going on most of the time anyway. Both Animal House and Revenge of the Nerds are movies of their era. If people are, right now tweeting, those movies are problematic in some ways. We know.
Yes.
But the costumes stand the test of time, and you can rock a toga. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Well, I was going to say you look fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have been really excited to have you on. You work with all these folks that are trying to get out there into the media, and they are trying to learn the ropes. And how did you come about all of your knowledge of how media works over the course of your career?
Ah, so years ago, I my first career was in radio broadcasting. So this is before podcasting and on the radio and all that, and I loved it. And I did music, but I also did an interview talk show. And I found that I was interviewing authors mostly, not really intentionally, but books would come to me. I didn't ask for them; they would arrive, galleys and such, and they would ask me to do interviews. And a lot of times I thought, well, this is great. This is an interesting story. This is an interesting person. And so, yeah, come on the show. And so that went on for quite some time. And of course, I was pitched by publicists far and wide to have their clients on the show. And I remember thinking, oh, that person was really good. They really knew what they were doing. They sold me on the person. They were really excellent. And then I had some where I thought, not only am I not going to book your guest, I would not say this directly to someone, but I will say it to you. Not only am I not booking your guest, but I don't ever want to work with you again
Right.
because, they would leave like 5-minute voicemails back in the day of voicemail and every day. it was just too much. So I would write this down. Oh, if I was a publicist, I would never do that. And if I was a publicist, I would do that. And so then a day came where I really wanted to have more control of my own destiny. I wanted my own business. I didn't want to be someone telling me what to do all the time. And so then I pulled the plug and started, hung up my shingle and started my work.
That is excellent. Well, and I'll bet you worked with a lot of publicists where you thought, this publicist is really well spoken. And then you met the author and went, why didn't your publicist prepare you for this?
Yes, there were times when I'd have a guest on and I'd think, well, the guest was mediocre, but I should have had the publicist on because the
Right, right.
publicist was really great. Yes,
To be able to be
yes.
the publicist who says, okay, before you go on this show, here's some basics. Because a lot of what you do is help prepare authors to deal with the media now.
Yeah.
What is it you need to know before you go into that? You've got a book. I'm trying blanking on the title of your book that was I found very helpful, and now I'm blanking on the title. What is that
That's
one?
okay, no problem.
There we go, Media Darling.
And
Yes.
when you hold up your book, by the way, when you're doing a show and you hold up your book, you want to hold it like this so
Yes,
that your
don't
fingers
cover
are,
the title or your name. That's right.
and it's
Yes,
like media
Media Darling.
darling. Yeah.
So yes, folks, if you are interested, not just if you're an author, but if you're interested in, connecting with the media for whatever project you're working on, this is a really good book for kind of the basics of how do you, engage in a healthy way and in a way that is positive for you and get your message out there into the world. So that's really helpful. So now that you've got this book out there, are you writing the next one or procrastinating on writing the next one?
Oh, I'm totally procrastinating.
Yeah.
Oh, please. That's why you have me on the show, right?
You're perfect. Yes,
I
the
am perfect.
perfect yes. So what has been pulling you away from your writing lately in terms of pop culture and what's going on in the world?
Oh my God, name it. I mean, Caitlin Clark, she's been the basketball player all over the news. Everybody's been talking about her. So that went on for quite some time, and that was a really great way to, avoid.
Yes,
And then O.J. Simpson, that story
right.
just broke the other day. So that was another way to kind of avoid what's going on. There's plenty of things, but those are and the eclipse.
Yes, yes.
I'm on the West Coast. I know you are too. We had an eclipse in 2017. It did not get the coverage that the East Coast does. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
You
No,
know,
it is an interesting illustration to have experienced both of those, online and go, The world didn't stop for us when we had I mean, did you get to go see it and do the goggles and,
oh,
actually check
yes.
it out when it came here? It
Yes.
was an amazing experience. I understand why, it's transcendent for the folks on the East Coast, but we already experienced that. We were there first. We didn't get that kind of coverage. So
When I
yeah, that
watched
was fun.
when I watch the network news now, because I like to keep up kind of what's going on. I watch the network news whenever they do a weather story. I mean, they might mention us. Oh,
Right.
yeah, it's gonna rain. And then it's like all East Coast. I'm like, you guys, we live here too, don't
Yes.
forget us. But
Yes,
anyway,
24-hour coverage of a hurricane in Florida and a wildfire that goes on here, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, there was a wildfire."
yeah.
Moving on, So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. But you're right. The Caitlin Clark story was a delight to see people that excited. My understanding is that the price of the tickets to see Iowa games was much higher than the price to see the men's games in the Final Four. And
That's
so that's
something.
really cool that people are realizing this is the story, this is where the action is, and that excitement. That's been
And and she's so amazing.
yeah,
I mean, she's got it. And she was so amazing. And it was fun to see where the media would interview little girls, and
yes.
talking about their idol now. And it was just kind of fun. It was just fun to see. I
Did you
enjoyed
see
that.
at the NBA 3-point competition this year at their annual the all the run up? They've got all these events that lead up to the All-Star game, and they do a 3-point competition. And
Hmm.
Sabrina Ionescu from the WNBA participated and beat every single one of the men except Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. There were, lots of girls in the audience going, "Oh yeah, that's who I want to be," And so
Yeah,
it was similar. And now, Caitlin Clark's going to go into the WNBA this next year, and so it's a good time for the WNBA.
it really is. And they make it look so easy,
Oh my
right?
gosh, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Someone who's good at what they do, they make it look easy. That's the
Yeah,
beauty of it.
yeah. I just showed up and I'm this excellent. Yeah, they're amazing. But yeah, it was interesting to hear that eclipse coverage as well. That it, but
It's still going on. and it's
Right.
over like
Yeah, they're
a
catching up.
week.
That
Sorry.
was cool to see. Um, so what's an activity that has been pulling you away from your writing?
You name it. Listen, when I'm avoiding my writing, my house looks great. I just want to say that. I mean, everything is clean. Things I haven't done in, a while are
Yeah,
done.
yes.
So that's kind of an amazing thing. And then I love to garden, and this is like the perfect time of year. And in the Northwest, it's green all year round, and the flowers are coming up. And it's just, I love to dig in the dirt. It's a nice balance to what I do because I'm always, kind of talking with people and trying to make these things happen for my clients. And then when I dig in the dirt, it's just me and the dirt and the flowers, that's it. And my cat who comes out and joins me.
Well, and one of
Yeah.
the things, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I love about gardening is, both of our lines of work involve lots and lots of deadlines and how am I going to get this thing done by, and the garden does not operate on our schedule. Like
Right.
I just planted the other day some seeds in just a pot, and I was like, I am really excited to see what these turn into. And it's going to take years. Like,
Oh.
and I just have to wait, and I don't get to decide that, this is I'm checking off the to-do list. But you're right. Our soil here in the Pacific Northwest is amazing. You're in the valley as well, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes. It is amazing. And I think that the garden as a metaphor fits a lot of things in life, having that things happen in stages and they happen at their own pace. You can do what you can
right.
to, make it work well, but it does its own thing. And the other thing I love about it is when you make a mistake, there's next year or there's
That's right.
next season. And it's very forgiving,
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Well, and
love that.
I think yeah, writers, folks in our literary kind of career path have a lot to learn from the garden. Thinking this is going to be magic and perfect tomorrow
Oh.
is not the way the writing life works. So yes, that is good for the soul.
So all these stories, when we share this, this is helpful for people to hear that you're not alone, right? Because like my first book took me 2 years to write. I
Mhm.
got in this group where write a book in a month. And first I thought, well, that's ridiculous because I know that isn't going to happen. But I really didn't think 2 years.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
was
it's
an
a
eye
long
opener.
process. And then, they say, have you heard the 20 to 20K? Uh,
Yes,
yeah, so,
group.
write 20 books and you should be able to expect about $20,000 of regular income, which a couple things. First of all, writing 20 books takes many, many years.
Yeah.
And second of all, $20,000 is not, you're not living
Yeah.
in the lap of luxury at that point. And I think
Right.
that's a good kind of realistic target for people to realize this is not all magically going to, come together instantly. And we'll have our day jobs. And you've got a day job that is, really interesting and you're working with authors. So that's cool that you kind of get to do both. I'll bet your conversations with authors are valuable to you as well as a writer.
Oh, definitely. And I tell you what else, Ben, I have so much more compassion for writers. I mean, I really do. I've always written to a certain degree, journals and short stories and things like that that weren't like a book, right, to get this book
Right.
done. But now the compassion I have for this whole process has deepened more than I can even tell you. So the clients I work with definitely benefit from that. But I can also kick them in the butt when they need it because I know what it takes. So there's
Yeah.
that part too. Yeah.
Did you have and not to put you on the spot or put your editor on the spot, but did you have a good editor for your book and a good
My first
experience with your editor?
my first one, not so much.
Yeah.
My first one, not so much. It took a couple of people.
Yeah.
And then we got there, but that kind of surprised me to tell you the truth. But yeah, you got to find the right person.
Really do. It's
Um,
like finding a therapist, where people think, I'm in therapy. Well, that's not enough. You have to find the right therapist for you, and finding the
there's
right editor for you is challenging.
It's really true. And you also, at least I don't know what your thought, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. There are a lot of tools out there that can be used, of course, and I think some of them are helpful and beneficial, but there is also a lot to be said for a real person reading and looking
Yes.
everything over and bringing their wealth of knowledge, experience, and expertise to the page. That I think my initial situation, it was more the tool tech piece than
Yeah.
that. And I noticed it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
So,
having a human who can say, this is how humans will respond to this, is really, really valuable. But
yeah,
it's also expensive. And so recognizing that there is a tension, a high quality editor is somebody who ought to be paid. And there are a
yeah.
lot of writers who are saying, I can't afford to get a really high quality editor who wants kind of market rate for editing. But if you can, I highly recommend it because that's the kind of thing they'll look for is how would a human respond to this, even this phrase? Is this saying what you mean to say? Is this sentence clear? A computer can't say, a human
No.
will get it in
Right. And
context.
they need to hear your voice
Yeah,
and keep your voice in, what you're writing. And like a developmental editor, I love them. Personally, I think a great editor walks on water.
yeah,
A great editor can take a book of an author that, yeah, and they've fleshed it out somewhat, but take it and actually make it a bestseller. I mean, it takes more than that, but they can do that. I think that they walk on water. I really do. Yeah, it's an investment and but it's worth it. And I
yeah.
think also when people, if they self-publish, uh, there are those who say, well, if you self-publish, you make a lot more money, but they're not looking at the investment up front in an editor, in a book cover, and all the things that need to be done to get that book into place.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And if you
yeah,
go cheap on some of those things, hey, I'll save money on editing. I'll save money by creating an AI cover, or even, and I am guilty of this myself, thinking I can design a cover. I don't have the expertise of a graphic designer. I don't have any experience doing it, but it's my first book and will also be my first cover. You've compounded the kind of, here's what I don't know with here's another thing I don't know. And you end up putting out a book and boy, cover makes a huge difference. When people see that, they absolutely, I tell my students every year, remember the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" is about people, not books.
can I borrow that line? That
Yes,
is a
yes,
great line. It's so true.
comes from a time when that book was this leather bound, there was no information on the cover. Now there are a lot of smart people working to communicate things with that cover, know what that cover needs to communicate, and find those smart people who know how to do that, and
And
and do judge the book by that cover.
it's not only the final reader who's looking at the cover and deciding to buy it, but if you're interested in getting media coverage, interviews, or whatever, the first thing they look at is that cover.
Yeah,
And I've watched people, media folks, who they'll have a stack of books and they will just look, yes, nope,
yep.
yes, nope, because they're forming an instantaneous opinion. Is that a good thing? No, but it is the truth. So
Well,
I
I mean,
think,
it is to some extent legitimate. I mean, they've got a set of interests, and their interest is I want to have viewership. And if I hold up this book with this embarrassing cover, it is now embarrassing to me and to my show.
yeah,
And so, as a writer, you have to think who wants to hold up this book. I say to authors for when we publish books, it is vitally important to me that you are proud of your book, which, the big presses won't necessarily let authors have any say in their covers. But we are
right.
small enough that I can take the time to say, it's really important to me that you are comfortable holding this up and showing this off, but also understand you want, that reporter to say, we want a picture of this book rather than, I think we'll just go with a picture of the author in the newspaper because the book cover actually is kind of embarrassing. Like they'll be making a judgment too.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And it'll be a snap judgment for sure. And part of it, for a long time when you were self-publishing has some acceptance now. It
Yeah.
didn't used to, and it's not that long ago.
No,
Although there is still some bias. I mean, let's just put it out there. There is still some bias. And looking at that cover is how some of them discern whether they're going to follow up with an author or not on that cover. If they see a bad cover, they're going to say self-published, no.
right,
So
right.
having a great and here's another, may I add another tip?
Oh yeah.
When if you come up with your own publishing company name, don't name it after yourself or your dog, is what I
Right.
would say. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, having and even create a logo, so that it looks
Yes.
professional. I mean, I think a lot of these things are just the little things that we do that show I'm taking this seriously, I'm trying to be professional. And in the same way,
Yes.
you could be a wonderful employee, but if you can't write a resume, which is a different skill set, you communicate, I'm not professional and I don't care enough about this to have learned this distinct skill set, writing a
Hmm.
resume. Your cover is part of that,
Yes.
does this look like you took this seriously, or did you say, I only work on, the part of the craft that matters to me, and I refuse to work on the part of the craft that might matter to you? Well, that communicates to that potential interviewer, I also might not care about doing well on your interview, because it's not
Hmm.
the book. And that's not somebody people necessarily want to work with. So,
Yeah. Unless you're just writing your book for your family,
right.
then, that's fine. Then
That's
you can
fine.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
don't ask a reporter to have to invest their time in something you didn't invest your time in, making palatable for them. So,
Right.
yeah, that is that's an important part of the
It
the
really is. It
um
really is.
so one of the things I always like to ask guests, and this is a weird question, I know, but it serves as kind
Okay.
of a Rorschach, so readers can get to know you before they're running out to buy your book, is if you were a character in Dungeons and Dragons, of all things, if you were in Dungeons and Dragons, what would be your race and class?
Hmm. Well, see, I spent a little time with this, Ben, because I'm just not as well educated in this as you and probably most of your listeners and viewers on YouTube. So, but what I can tell you is I would definitely want to be a wizard or something kind of supernatural.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've learned something about me,
Well,
something mysterious.
yes, I mean, this is exactly why I think this is a great, fun thing to kind of explore. So,
Okay.
what do you think that says about you?
Hmm. God, you ask good questions. Has anyone told you that? I'm sure they have. You probably hear it all the
I'm
time.
I'm I'm learning over. I've read a good book about it, actually.
Oh, you did. Um, I think it says that, you work hard at something, but there's always a little magic that has to come in. There's something you cannot define in the goals and the things that you want and what you create. There's some magic involved. I think that it comes from that.
Yeah, yeah. That's very cool. I mean, I'll have guests on who, they want to be the giant, they want to be the fighter, they want to be the person who shoots arrows really well. And so I do think it says something about you as an individual that you have worked in this, business and understand there is an element of magic. I appreciate that because that is absolutely the case. So okay, we're going to go to our ad break briefly, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Mhm.
Special announcement time. NotAPipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Hi, I'm Dust Jackson. I'm here to tell you about my book, Chronicles of Dawn, Book 1, Weapon of God. This is a series, a trilogy right now. See where it goes from there. It talks of the main character, our main protagonist, Dawn Lightfeather. She is a Nephilim, meaning half angel, half human. She has incredible abilities, powers, but she's not unstoppable. So it's available on Amazon Kindle and Nook and various other ebooks out there. For paperback and hardcover, it's available on Amazon only right now. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or whatever, please drop me a line at chroniclesofdawn@gmail.com. That's chroniclesofdawn@gmail.com. It'll be right here.
Alexandra has never been so far from home or so deep in danger. Now fans can follow the journey to the end. Reader Views says New Horizon is a fantastic beginning to the Europa trilogy. This riveting adventure will have you hanging on to the edge of your seat. Get all the books of the trilogy, New Horizons, Challenger, and New Frontiers, wherever you buy books. Or visit the author at michellecleigh.com. Leigh spelled Leigh. Join the adventure today. Authors, poets, screenwriters, writers of all kinds. We're putting together our team for the Alzheimer's Association's annual The Longest Day fundraiser, and we want you to join us to use your writing superpowers for a good cause. Our team, Writing Against the Darkness, joins together via Zoom or in-person meetups and writes from dawn until dusk on the summer solstice. So mark your calendars for Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We're teaming up with some wonderful partner organizations to build our team. Thanks to the Author Alchemy Summit, Indigo Editing, Unsolicited Press, Pile Press, the Pile Press magazine Chunk, and Overcup Press for joining with NotAPipePublishing in this fundraiser. There are links to all of those partners in the show notes. If you want to get to network with writers from these great partners, get a whole lot of writing done, and raise funds for Alzheimer's research and care for families suffering from this disease, click on the link in the show notes and join the team. You're going to be writing anyway. Why not write even more and do some extra good for the world? See you there. Welcome back, everybody. So, Joanne, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Well, Ben, I love daydreaming. I think it's just such a wonderful activity, especially when like new thoughts just kind of drop in out of nowhere. Just ideas, just suddenly, maybe you've been mulling certain things over and something wonderful, like a story idea or whatever, just kind of drops in. Oh, I love that feeling. It's like, that kind of thing. But something I've been considering lately in this world of, politics and all that's going on, and I know everyone can relate to all of that, um, is this idea that if you really believe in something that's right for you, whatever it is you're doing in your life, whether you've decided to devote your life to writing or a certain career or a certain relationship, and you feel that you're aligned and it's right, then if someone comes up and challenges you on that, if you really know it's right, I don't think there's any reason to get miffed about it,
Yeah.
because it's only when you doubt part of yourself that you get upset by someone challenging you. At least that's kind of what I've been thinking about. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I recognize there is a line. If the person is saying, my differing opinion is that you don't have the right to exist for whatever reason, because of, the color of your skin or the country you come from or your sexual orientation, like there is that James Baldwin quote about, I respect something to the effect, I will respect your right to have a differing opinion until your differing opinion is challenges my right to exist. And so, there is a line there, but I think you're absolutely right that a lot of times when people feel threatened, they're confronted with difference and they don't have the confidence to say, you can be different and that's okay. Because they're saying, if you're different, that's scary to me. And some of that anger that we see comes about, when people are saying, oh no, this tolerance of difference is frightening to me. And so, yeah, I agree. There is learning in yourself to say, I recognize that my path is a valid one, and I don't need your approval for this path. And that's hard. That's a growing kind of thing.
It really is. I mean, it's an evolution. That's something you have to start playing with, because for a long time, in my past, certainly being challenged by things would create, conflict, upset.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's just having more and more experiences, but I'm at a point in my life now where I'm not letting that person take my peace of mind. I'm
Yes.
not letting them have that. I
Yeah.
feel that way about the news too. It's important to know what's going on in the world. It's important to take action where you can, but it's also important not to let that flood you over so that you are incapable of doing whatever, or you're emotionally just distraught.
Yes.
That is not okay.
Well, I wonder if your experience in radio helped with that, because you were not in the 24-hour news kind of AM radio. You were in music, and so there's still the news, hey, we need to read the headlines, we need to be aware of what is happening, and now on to the fun conversation, now onto the song. Like, it doesn't have to take over the entire show. And so did you find that you had kind of a healthy relationship with the news when it wasn't the entire hour?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I absolutely think that's an excellent point. And now where we are in the world is everything bombards us all the time. So it's more difficult to separate those things out, but absolutely necessary. And I'm certainly not saying that you shouldn't be passionate and have strong beliefs and ways that you think things should be. We should, we all should. It's important. We have to be citizens. We're a part of humanity. All of those things are important. But allowing others to push you around to where you're anxious, can't sleep, I mean, none of that is helpful for anybody.
And I am
So
totally guilty of it. Like I will get sucked into the news cycle where I'm going, oh, I can't just read the articles on the headlines on the Washington Post. I have to read every bit of analysis. Why? Why am I doing this? It's so that I can get angry with a stranger who is writing this column. Like that, I don't need that level of analysis. Often it is not providing new insight. And so, yeah, finding a way to say, okay, I understand what's going on. That's enough. And it's not my entire life, but that is a challenge for me. I will get,
me too.
yeah, yeah,
Me too. But it's
creating
getting
those
better.
barriers.
Those and they use hooks. Some call it, online they call it clickbait. I don't like that terminology, but it's used. But they use words to grab you and get you involved. And so, but you have a choice. We always have a choice. How far am I going to go down that rabbit hole? Am I going to go down that rabbit hole right now, or should I just wait until later? Do I want to check the source first?
Yeah.
You know?
Do I just want to step away from this and go work in my garden? Like
Yeah.
that often is this I am no longer doing something constructive and I could be in the garden. So I'm gonna go, the garden needs me more than this newspaper does.
That's so
You know?
true, Ben. It's so true. I'm so glad we share that. I
Yeah.
think it's an
But
awesome thing.
it is something we need to be reminded of. And I think
Yes.
over this next year, this next summer, we're going to need to remind one another a lot.
Yes, we are.
Touch grass.
Yeah. Yep. I
Uh,
like that. Remind one another. I think that's really, really strong and important. Yeah.
yeah. No, everybody listening, when I start to sound like I am going down a rabbit hole, feel free to remind me. Your garden needs you.
Ben,
Go outside.
go dig in the dirt.
Yes, exactly.
It's grounding.
Right. So when you are daydreaming and you're out getting into the garden and you're thinking about the next book, what have you
Mm.
been ruminating about when it comes to the next book?
Okay, two things. I have two books. Actually, I have three. You know how it is. I'm sure you do.
Always, right.
Okay, so the next in my series about doing media, that kind of thing, it's how to figure out what media would be right for you, and then how do you pitch them?
Yeah,
And different channels, different types of media, they have different requests. And really what it comes down to is knowing the individual and what they want. That's even more important than the bigger categories.
right.
So it's a book about that. And uh, and, and it should have been written, 15 years ago, but
But it would be different
it's
now
now.
anyway. So I
Well,
think I think it's
thank you.
wonderful that you've got that timing because I'll work with authors who have one concept of the way that a book ought to be promoted. They'll say, I need to get onto Good Morning America because that's the
Mm,
only thing I'm thinking of. And saying, have you considered podcasts? Have you thought about your local newspaper? Have you know?
mhm,
And so, yeah, and then I think you're absolutely right. Teaching them to think about what is that journalist looking for? This isn't just about you. There's somebody else involved. How do we make sure that this benefits the source as well? And that's why they're going to want to promote you because it's good for them. So, yeah, I think that's and authors a call to empathy appeals to authors anyway. They have to work with that with their own work, and then somehow when they get into the world of promotion they turn that part of their brain off, and it's like, no, think about this other person on the other end. They're really important, so I'm excited to check that one out.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's two categories to what you're speaking of. There's what I call you media. So it's all the things that you generate, your website, it's your social
Yeah,
media, it's your podcast, it's your YouTube channel, whatever, but you control it. So if you do an interview and you hate it, it never needs to see the light of day. Then earned media is when someone else is involved and you have to jump through some hoops. That's different. And that's what we're talking about.
yeah,
So because you have to sell them on the idea first, and then you have access to their audience, their network, and their people. So, and then
well,
the other book, do you want to hear about the other book?
yes,
You're the only one who's heard this.
okay, I'm first.
I mean, a couple of, friends and,
Right, right.
personal, but no one on a podcast. Okay, so here's what I'm playing with. It's fiction, sort of. Yeah, no, it's fiction. It's fiction. It's time travel.
Okay.
You've probably done time travel, haven't you?
I,
Anyway, so it has to do with someone who had been ill in the past, who's no longer living actually, and they found a cure for the illness. And so this woman goes back in time to when she was 10 years old, when the originator, or the person who discovered how to cure this illness, was in graduate school. So this 10-year, first of all, she has to figure out how to get to Berkeley.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And, at 10, that's kind of different. And then approach him and say, well, in the future, you're going to do this and you're going to invent this. And so it's all about talking him, telling him what he's going to do and how he needs to do it now, not in 15 years, 20
Yeah.
years.
So
Yeah.
it's in a way, it's an anti-procrastination book. Don't
Yeah, kind of is.
procrastinate. You are
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
the world needs your work and it needs it sooner than you think. That's a great
Thank you.
message.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
will tell you the trick with time travel stories, and I tell authors, don't write time travel stories unless. So the trick with time travel stories is you can get to that kind of place where you're like whiteboarding out, like, how does this character go back and da da da. It becomes all about we're going to create a parallel dimension and da da, and what you accidentally do when you do that is undermine the stakes of the story, because the reader will say, well, then why didn't they go back 5 minutes earlier and solve that problem?
Oh,
So the best time travel stories
ooh.
I've ever read are the ones where the protagonist doesn't actually have complete control over the time travel.
Oh,
Read Octavia Butler's, it wasn't Fledgling. What was the one called? It wasn't Parable of the
I got to
Sower.
write this down.
He has one where, so this is such a wonderful story. So here's Octavia Butler, this brilliant woman, but she's, 6'2" black woman writing some of the best sci-fi in the world, and then going to these science fiction conventions where everybody's white men. And she would be on these panels and they would say, oh, and then now we're going to talk about time travel stories. And all these white men would go, I want to go back to the medieval era. I would be a knight, da 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 da. And she's looking down these lines going, I'm a black woman. There is no time in the past I would ever want to go to. And
Oh,
so she kind of felt challenged to write a time travel story from a black woman's perspective. And it
mm.
is brilliant because the protagonist isn't voluntarily going back in time. She's being pulled back into the past, which is
Oh,
a
wow.
powerful metaphor too, and pulled back into the antebellum South. And so, of course, as soon as she arrives, she's made a slave. She's treated like, you're clearly a runaway slave. You're a slave now. When she pops back into her own time, the late 1970s LA, her white husband is like, where did you go? How do I keep you safe? And so they tie themselves together even when they're asleep, so that if she gets pulled into the past, he'll go with her, which is a
Oh,
cool kind of insight into their relationship. But then when they get pulled into the antebellum South, he has to pose as her owner. And
oh,
it ruins their relationship
oh
because
my gosh.
wondering, is he pretending or is he kind of liking this,
Oh,
and so the book is brilliant, but at no point do you say, well, why didn't the character just choose to go to a different time? She's not the one who's in complete control of the time travel.
I
It
see.
actually is. So I love time
Yes.
travel stories, but not here's the technology of time travel stories. Because then, why didn't you go 5 minutes back and tell yourself how to build a better time machine? Like,
Little that I know, I would be on this podcast receiving wonderful advice.
yes,
Thank you
have the
very much,
character
Ben.
not be able to fully control it. It makes the story really cool. I am
Yeah.
excited to read that one. I think that's a great
It,
idea. And I think you
well,
could really play with that concept of your work matters.
oh, I was thinking maybe she would go back in a dream,
Oh, yeah.
go be in a dream and think she was dreaming it. And then there would be like signs when she'd come back that something did change. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I'm
good. And
still
so it has that kind of magical, this isn't because she plugged herself in and she's an astrophysicist and she, developed this cool,
right.
universe folding technology. And now what are the consequences of the universe folding technology? Like that's a different story. We want the story of the person that she's going back and talking to and their relationship, these human beings and what they're dealing with. That would be
Yes.
good.
Well, and it's kind of like life anyway, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot we can't control. I mean,
Yeah.
things happen and it's like, whoa, how did this happen? And suddenly you're having to deal with things. So it's sort of how it is.
Well, and I think
Anyway.
your reader will identify with that because we are time traveling in an uncontrolled way into the future. Like, hey, I just showed up at work. I wasn't even thinking about driving on my way to work. That's
Oh,
dangerous. How did I get
yeah.
here? Like, and so,
Yeah.
I think that your reader will go, I can understand that feeling of I just showed up here. Only in her case, it's the past. That could be really cool.
Yeah. Wow. See, now I'm excited.
Yes, yes. And so,
Yeah, now I'm
then I
excited.
say, no, now go right. But we
No,
can't.
go right.
We've got to finish the show. So what is going on that we should announce for folks who are excited to follow your career? What's coming up for you?
Well, let's see. There is an association. Are most of your viewers fiction writers mostly?
Really targeting readers. So the hope is that
Oh,
they're readers,
readers.
but it
So
is often fiction readers. Yes.
okay, but both. Okay. Oh, excellent. That's excellent. So the Nonfiction Writers Association has a big conference coming up. They've been doing a virtual conference for like 14 years, so before it even became a thing during the pandemic and such.
Yeah.
And they've invited me to be the final speaker of the
Oh,
3-day
how
event, which is
cool.
kind of cool. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
going to deliver techniques for getting publicity for your book. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So that's going to be really fun. And then later in the fall, I'm doing a course on how to do your own publicity. You're an author, how to do your own publicity.
Yeah.
And it's about 6 weeks,
Is that
once a week.
conference in person or is that one virtual?
That'll be virtual as well, but live. It'll
Yeah.
be,
So folks
live.
can folks sign up for that yet? Is that
Very soon.
okay? So
But
keep an eye out.
I would take names if someone was interested, absolutely, and I
Yeah.
would let you know.
And so
Um,
that's the Nonfiction Writers Association. What's the name of the group?
it's actually the Nonfiction Authors Association is the
Yeah.
name of the group.
Yeah.
And
And
then the
okay.
Writers Conference is the conference. And then in the fall, I'm just delivering this is not the conference itself. This is in the fall
Oh, okay.
class. Yeah, six
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's excellent. Well,
Oh
yes,
yeah.
folks, check
Yeah.
those out. So another thing that I like to do via the show, and I will be honest, I'm not always good about posting these, but I like to ask authors, what would be your poll question if I remember to toss it up on Twitter and various things? What would be your kind of hot question to ask the world?
I've heard a few of your shows, Ben, so I'm aware of your poll questions. Okay, well, let's see. I think I have a couple. One is um, cats or dogs.
Yeah.
No, I like them both. So,
Me too. Now, are you one of the folks who is of the opinion that the answer to the question, cats or dogs, reveals something about the person themselves?
yes.
What's your
Yes.
theory about the difference between dog people and cat people? I would love to hear this.
Um, I think cat people are maybe more snuggly,
Hmm.
and kind of sweet and that sort. And dog people are more, let's go out and, go for a run and let's go for a walk and let's, be active and play. I mean, they're both good. That's why I like them both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of, cuddling up with a book and a cat. I mean, that's nice.
Is pretty great. Yes, I love dogs and cats, but you're right. They are very, very different. The dog's personality. I don't see the personality differences so much in the owners, but boy, do I see it in the animals themselves. I have a theory that all cats are French existentialists, and we think they're saying meow, but they're not. They're saying merde. And they're just going around saying, they're smoking their black cigarettes and they're saying, merde, merde, this is all shit as far as the cat is concerned. Whereas the dog is just like, I love you. I just want you to know I love you. Everything is that I love you. It's good to have a balance.
Well, I think maybe you haven't had enough variation in cats.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I've had the cats. Yeah. I've had some different cats.
Okay, well, so
They were
some
not all
cats,
homogeneous. You're right.
well, a lot of people think cats just, they want to do whatever they want to do. And some of them actually see you as the parent, like,
Yeah.
oh, mom or oh, dad, and then dogs, you need to lead dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to lead dogs, if you start being like equal to them, they will take advantage of you.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
and I think mine do. I think my dogs recognize my need. I actually named one of my dogs external validation. I think my dogs
Oh.
recognize my need for external validation, and they're like, all we have to do is run up and tell him we love him, and then he just, becomes a puppy puddle.
Okay,
And
well,
so, yeah,
now I know a lot
bring.
about you.
Yeah, that does reveal a lot, right? But yeah, now I've got two puppies. My Evie, my external validation passed away, which is very sad
Oh,
real, literal, and metaphorical level. My
Yeah.
external validation is gone, but we've got two puppies, and they are so cute and monstrous, just little goblins who want to destroy everything, and we are far too forgiving. So
And
we're
what are their names and how old are they?
Merry and Pippin from Lord of the Rings. So yes, we've got Merry and Pippin, these goofball characters, and they fit their names. Although sometimes I think we should have named you after the villains. They want to destroy everything. They're very young, and so the hope is that they're less than 6 months old, and so the
Oh
hope
my
is that
gosh.
as they grow out of we're seeing progress. They are learning. They can sort of sit for a second until the other reminds them, hey, we could just jump. And so we're making progress slowly but
Yeah.
surely.
Yeah, well, we'll see because they already know they can sucker you into
They,
anything. So,
I,
they're at 6 months, they know that. We'll see at
yes.
3 years.
My partner Crystal she is not necessarily as consistent, but she's firmer. And then I'm a little more consistent, but less firm. So hopefully the dogs
Okay.
will find a healthy balance there.
Good. Good.
So what is
Mine are,
oh yeah.
I was just gonna say mine are 4 and 5, and they're named Susie Q and Jimmy Jam.
And what breeds?
One is like a mutt. She was a
Yeah.
rescue, but I think she's terrier and Shih Tzu, and the other is a Havanese.
How big is the Havanese?
It's about the similar size. I think
Okay, so
he's
they're
about,
medium sized.
yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Not a purse dog, but at the same time, not, pushing you off the couch. Like,
Right.
I like the medium sized. My
Yeah.
Evie was a pit and a rescue and, wonderful dog, but had no concept of her own size and weight. She was a big dog. And now the puppies, they're these little leapers. They're a Boston Terrier and Border Collie mix, which is an
Oh,
interesting mix. So they're
yeah.
very, very cute and they can jump. And so, walking into the house and I'm all excited to see them and then I'm trying to train them, but please don't jump up and bite my face to express your love. Like that's not, healthy. So we're working on that.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But
It's
yeah,
funny.
when yours, how long did yours are 4 and 5 now?
Mhm.
When did you see them kind of relaxing into their adult personas?
I don't think that's happened yet.
Okay, fair.
No, 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 no. Yeah, I don't no, but I'm just being funny. I'd say maybe mm, close to 2 years.
Okay, so there's hope.
And it's going to take a little time. It's like your
Yes.
garden, you're going to
Oh,
have to, yeah,
yeah, we're learning. We're learning what toys calm them down,
yeah,
how long a walk we can take them on to wear them out. That's
yes,
and which is good
important.
for us too. We're wearing
Yes,
ourselves out.
yes, yes. Well, I love being on the early end because you still have a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah,
Later, they're wonderful. They get, you've spent a lot of time together. You know each other, but I mean, it's hard.
yeah,
It's hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So what
So,
is in your to be read pile? Like, what are you looking forward to reading or finishing up? I always say to folks, I don't want the show to be homework. So not something you have read in the past, but what are you looking forward to?
well, so a couple of things. First of all, a lot of the clients I work with are authors, right? And new people come to me and they want me to read their books. So I'm always
Right.
reading new material by people. So there's that. And then now and then, and I do have a stack that I want to get to.
Yeah,
So this is my challenge.
right.
And I also, just as an aside, do you remember Marie Kondo,
Yeah,
the tidy
yes. Yeah,
expert? She's an author.
yeah.
And I'll never forget one time I'm listening to her and she says, and if you're gonna own books, you should never own more than 30 books.
I know. Yep.
And I'm like, by the side of the bed?
Yes. I
What
mean,
do you mean?
from a marketing perspective, that was brilliant because the
Brilliant.
firestorm she created was
Yes.
nuts.
Yes.
People like me going, "That's impossible," but thank you
Yes.
for that advice. And
Yes.
and it was also an interesting illustration of the point you made earlier about not needing to be angry. Like people got so angry, and I was like, "She's not your boss. Like you can just go, okay, Marie Kondo said to have 30 books." And my response was no. It didn't, the Sturm and Drang that generated was really good marketing. But it was
Yes, it
kind of
was.
wild.
Yes, it was. There were definitely publicists behind that. There was, they came up with that. They did
The
a great
hot
job. She
take.
had a TV show and the whole
Yeah,
bit. Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah,
yeah.
but that made me laugh. But I have a book that I've been working on for a while, and it's it's a young man who is really traveling the world, mostly in Spain, some islands around Spain, but it's all his adventures as he's on this, and he has like almost no money. He goes to Switzerland to work at a ski resort for a while to get a few dollars in order to travel over here, and it's all these different people that he meets. So while I haven't been able to digest the book in just a couple of sittings, which is my preference, I've enjoyed chapter by chapter. Oh yeah, I do have it here. Is it all right if I hold it up?
Oh, yeah, by all means.
Ibiza
And
Blues.
is it nonfic? No, it's a novel. Okay.
It's a
So,
novel,
yeah,
but the guy, yeah,
one of those
I
where it's
think
very similar to his actual lived experience.
yes,
Yes.
he
That
had, yeah,
So
yeah,
Gary Culver, Ibiza Blues. We will
yes.
certainly link to that in the show notes as well, so folks can check.
Oh, great.
It does sound
Yeah.
like a good one for dipping in and out of because you're experiencing it at the same pace as the character, So
Yes.
that sounds good.
And he's a good writer. He's a new writer. I think this is his first effort.
Really,
It's really well done.
yeah,
He's a good writer. And he does dialogue, and I mean it's just it pulls you in. I'm impressed by that. That's a real skill. Yeah.
yeah. To be able to catch one of the things that I had to learn early on, but luckily before my first novel was published, was somebody pointed out to me in a college creative writing class, all your characters sound the same. And it was a really
Mm.
good, like, ooh, this is something I really need to work on. They, how do I give them distinct voices? And so I encourage you, writers who are listening, do your characters respond in the same way? Do they use the same slang? That's not the way
Mm.
humans talk. So how do you make your characters sound distinct? And it takes time. That's another thing that we expect we'll be masters at in a day, and it takes a long time to learn to hear people's distinct voices. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice.
So there's this segment that I've added in the context of our political world of outrage and Marie Kondo saying you only get 30 books. What would be your hot take that you would toss into that you know uh, milieu of horrible opinions? What would be your wildest hot take that you would go for that would get people's attention?
Oh, well, you start. What's yours?
Oh gosh. Ooh, tossing it back at me. That's a really good
Yeah.
and I do have some. I mean, some of mine are uh, too tepid to actually get attention. Like I prefer Marvel movies to DC. So do most people. That's not going to get. So what would be something that would get a lot of attention because it's just almost objectively wrong. And yet I feel strongly about it. I don't know. My son and I had a really interesting discussion this last week via, we're texting to one another. I later found out he was in a college class and was bored and was texting his father. But we were talking about
It's
religion,
funny.
and he was he was talking about I'm an agnostic, and he was
Hmm.
I am uncomfortable with my and he identifies as an agnostic too, although I was raised Christian, he was raised very much whatever, which meant became he considered himself an atheist for most of his life. And now he's at this place where he's saying, "Oh, I want to be open to other possibilities," but he said, "I am uncomfortable with the idea that I'm kind of a fence sitter." And I said, I don't think agnosticism has to be fence sitting. I consider myself a dogmatic, orthodox agnostic. And so we had a great conversation about orthodox agnosticism, the firm belief that certainty is impossible. And so maybe that would be my hot take: is it is a legitimate position to be a a dedicated, faithful, firm agnostic. I think people would there would be a lot of people who would debate that one.
No, I love that. I mean, I couldn't top that. I mean, anything I could come up with would be, silly compared to that. I remember
Well,
having
silly is going to get a lot better attention
oh, I,
though.
I remember, my dad well, he's a scientist, so he was an atheist, and I wasn't. I don't know what I was, but
Yeah.
I was, I want to be a wizard, right? I mean,
Right.
there's something else going on.
Yes.
But we would definitely have conversations about this, and I said to him once, I said, well, in religion, some of those stories are pretty wild. They just have a lot of wild stories. I mean, I just, and he says, you don't think scientists don't have wild stories? You ever heard of the Big Bang Theory?
Right.
So we were going through all this stuff, and it just so surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I'm glad that he had that perspective and was able to go, let's acknowledge some of the stuff in the natural world is really wild too.
yeah, yes.
Like, I learned relatively recently, I was in my 40s when I learned that wombats poop cubes. Cubes
That's funny.
is so bizarre, and it's so that they have evolved the ability to do this so that they can move them around and essentially build structures. And it makes more sense if they are cubes rather than round and would roll away on hills. So they've
Wow.
evolved the ability to poop cubes.
That's incredible.
No religion would come up with something that wild, and it
No.
actually exists.
Yes.
So yes, we do live in an absurd, bizarre universe, and it is cool that a scientist is able to acknowledge that to you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved about him. That's what
Yeah,
but as a kid, it was kind of like, I'd get into some sort of difficulty with a playmate or whatever, and I'd come in and, I wanted him on my side, and he'd say something like, well, okay, now I've heard your side of the story, but they have a side of the story too, and I don't know what it is.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
But I just want you to always be on my side. No, I want to examine the evidence. Yeah, that
But it
is
serves me now. I
yes.
mean, it does. It serves me now because I watch kind of what's being said in the news and all that, and I question all of it. And someone just spewing forth an opinion, that's fine. Opinions are fine, but they're
Right.
opinions.
Yeah.
And when you start to think an opinion is just the gospel, I mean,
Right.
then that's an issue.
Yes, and that's I am deeply uncomfortable with certainty when people are like, I am absolutely sure of this. And I'm like, really, are you? Because I'll bet we could poke some holes in that. You know?
I love the question, are you certain enough to be uncertain?
Yeah. And are you willing? And the big thing I keep coming back to in our kind of our modern politics is, are you willing to acknowledge error?
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks who are saying, but I have to double down, even though this thing that I believe is kind of falling apart in front of my eyes, because I can never say I was wrong. And I'm like, we have to get to a place where we support one another when someone says, I was wrong about that. Thank you. That is a
Yeah.
good thing. There's no shame in acknowledging that you were wrong about things. We've all been wrong about things.
And
But
and and that's a good thing many times. Think of all the things that, you're relieved that you were wrong. Like you
yeah,
thought, oh, there was a bump and I went to the doctor. I thought I had cancer. And it turns out to be, like nothing. I had
right.
a bug bite. Here's some ointment. And it's like, oh, glad I
Yeah.
was wrong.
Yeah, rather than the doctor must be wrong. This has got to be
Yeah.
the answer. I'm going to get five more opinions. No, it's okay to just be wrong.
Yeah. Being wrong
And
is okay.
yeah, so yeah, that's that. We'll keep pushing that. Reward people for acknowledging error. You know.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world. I mean, this whole, fighting because, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. I mean, no wonder we have so many issues,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world. So.
Um, so where can folks find out more about you when they are looking to check out your book, when they're looking to find a publicist? Where can they find you online?
Okay. Well, I have a website, which is my name, joannemccall.com. And then I'm all over social media and it's at Joanne McCall. So just look me up there and let's connect. I'd love to know what you're up to. I love writers. I love authors. I love to know what you're writing. This is always my interest. And in fact, the best part of my job is I work with just amazing people and they're always up to something interesting.
Yeah.
And, how can we make this bigger in the world, is really what we look at. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Ben, tell
So
me what.
yeah, I know. Yes, I have already benefited from your advice. So yes, I highly recommend folks go to joannemccall.com, connect.
Thank
So
you.
who would be your recommendation for somebody I should have on this show?
Yeah, I've got a couple of people. One is Kathleen Mattson is her name, and she's written a couple of books, but one is she wrote a book on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's called The Gentleviewer's Guide to the Obsessive Buffy the Vamp. Do I have it? I might have it on my shelf here somewhere. Well, anyway, but if you liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Yeah, and I totally did.
she's got, you should get this book. I mean, she's got all the, and I guess evident that lots of people have commented on her book. And so there's a few things that she missed. I remember her saying to me once, God, I don't, I can't believe I missed this one particular thing. So I think she's doing an update.
Oh,
So she
good.
keeps it updated. but that she would be great, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
she's Dungeon and Dragons and all that. She would offer so much along those lines, whereas I'm new to some of that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, she would be wonderful. In fact, I should connect her with one of our authors. Our publishing company published a novel by a woman named Sang Chroma, and Sang's book, Jin, takes the Liberian folklore she was taught at her father's knee at home, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Her love of, she grew up in Baltimore and loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so she mixes the two in this novel
Oh,
in this way where Buffy fans will like all the chapter titles are the names of episodes, which is something that only diehard fans would get, so she's
yeah.
mixed that in this really clever way. So I will have to tell Sang about the Gentleviewer's
Oh,
Obsessive
yeah.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She would love that. That's
Well, Kathleen needs to know about that book for
yes,
sure.
yeah, I'll bet she
Yeah.
would enjoy Jin.
Oh,
It's
she
fun.
would. I'm sure of it. Yeah. And then there's another woman named Becky Saltzman who she is so engaging and so much fun. I've seen her on shows. I think she does a regular thing for LinkedIn. She's works for
Mm.
them. And she's written a couple of books, but her main emphasis is on critical thinking and how to think really smart. And she can communicate those ideas in just a wonderful way that I think you'd find really interesting and engaging. I
Yeah.
think your audience would too.
Well, and I want to have more nonfiction authors, and so that would be something that I will absolutely reach out to her because that would be wonderful to get somebody on to talk about. I think as in the summer we're going to be going into, having
Hmm.
somebody to talk about critical thinking would be really really timely.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, before we get to our send off, I've got some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email that to me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Please check out Joanne's book, the title of which is, again,
Darling,
Media Darling. That's right,
darling.
Media Darling. So check out Media Darling, and when you finish reading it, give it a short review. A single click on that 5th star will make Joanne's day. It really does make a difference. So please give that a review, and the same for this show. Please give it a rating and review. Click on that little thumbs up icon there. It would really be appreciated. So, Joanne, as our listeners go into this next week, what are some pieces of advice they should kind of take with them? What are some things they should be considering?
Here's the number one. It's time to procrastinate on procrastinating
Mm,
and get to it.
get to it. Get
Get to
to
it.
it. Yes.
And then the other thing I would add is for anyone who's interested in doing interviews with the media, that this is a skill, just like any other, that you can embrace and get better at. And the
Yep.
whole idea is when you're doing an interview that it comes across as you just sound so natural.
Right.
You come across as really natural. That means you've done it a while and it means you've probably been trained. And I know that everyone has seen people do interviews that looks uncomfortable. Well, we don't want to be that. So you can do it. Watch other interviews, learn from that. The book will be helpful. And if I can help, I'm happy to in some
We,
way.
we talked about Caitlin Clark, these excellent athletes who seem like this all just comes naturally. They worked really hard at it
Yeah.
and they studied, and it wasn't just playing games, it was practice. So get your copy of Media Darlings and actually read up and practice and learn. It is something you can study and improve at. Absolutely. And the last thing that I would say as you go into this week is remember, no matter how much you procrastinate, Joanne and I are still proud of you.
If I take my time.